There is a war being fought right now, not with soldiers or tanks, but with light. A silent, high-stakes battle for control over the future itself. A battle for technological supremacy, fought between the global powers of America, Europe, and the rising challengers in Asia, China, and Japan.
To limit the effects of the shortage and reduce their technological dependence, America, China, and Europe are taking action. In 2022, each announced its microprocessor plan for developing their own production capacity.
The College of Commissioners has adopted today the European Chips Act.
要实现我们第二个百年目标，我们就是要走自主创新的道路。
The chip war has been declared.
There are a couple of different wars going on simultaneously. There's wars between companies struggling for market share. There's also competition between nations for who gets which part of the supply chain.
And at the very center of this conflict is a single machine, the most complex, most expensive, and most important piece of technology ever built. A machine so powerful, it holds a 100% global monopoly, making modern AI possible. The company that controls this machine can choose who wins the war. This is the story of that machine, the weapon at the heart of the tech war, and the company that built the choke point on the future itself. For 50 years, the tech world lived by a single sacred rule, Moore's law. The current generation uses billions of transistors, and according to Moore's law, this number doubles every 2 years. The idea predicted by Intel co-founder Gordon Moore was that our computers would get faster, more powerful, and cheaper at an exponential rate, and he was right. Moore's law gave us everything. Laptops, the internet, smartphones, the entire modern world was built on this promise of making smaller devices means more power. The way you do that is by shrinking transistors. First of all, what is a transistor and how it works? Think of a transistor as a microscopic light switch. It's a tiny gate that can either be on or off, representing the ones and zeros of computer language. The microscopic switches that are the building blocks of every chip. The smaller you can make them, the more you can cram onto a single piece of silicon. But by the early 2000s, chip makers hit a wall, a fundamental wall of physics. To etch smaller and smaller circuits, they needed a smaller and smaller pen. Their tool was light, and they had run out of colors. They were using something called deep ultraviolet or DUV lithography, but the wavelength of that light was just too big. It was like trying to paint a Rembrandt with a paint roller. The lines were too blurry. Moore's law was about to die. The entire industry was stuck. Intel, Samsung, TSMC, they all knew that without a new kind of light, innovation would grind to a halt. The future, thought, was cancelled. But far away from the big tech hubs, in a small Dutch town, one company had a wild idea. An idea so difficult, so expensive, with very less chance of success that most experts thought it was impossible, and industry thought it was science fiction. That company was ASML.
The most advanced machine tool in history.
Very advanced logic manufacturing, most of the AI cannot happen.
It still does blow my mind. I think even if you learn more about it, it blows your mind even more.
The big machine at the end of the day is used to transfer a pattern which we store on a mask onto a wafer. And then at the end of the day, you cut them in pieces, you package them, and then you end up in your phone.
Benschop has joined Dutch electronics giant Philips in 1984. 2 weeks later, ASML was founded as a subsidiary, conducting research out of a leaky shed nearby in Eindhoven. It broke off from Philips with an IPO in 1995, and 2 years later, Benschop helped spearhead ASML's first foray into EUV. Their idea was to create a new kind of light, an extreme light, something called extreme ultraviolet lithography, or EUV, that could draw circuits smaller than ever before. The plan was unbelievable. To make this special light, they needed to create something like a tiny star inside a machine. Here's how it works. Inside a sealed airless chamber, they drop a tiny ball of melted tin. Then they hit it with a super powerful CO2 laser. Not just once, but twice. The first laser blast flattens the tiny ball. The second blast instantly turns it into a tiny, super hot cloud, hotter than the surface of the sun. And that cloud flashes with the special extreme light they need. And they have to do this 50,000 times every single second. Perfectly, without fail. For years, other companies said it couldn't be done. The problems were huge. This special light gets soaked up by almost everything, even air. That's why the machine has to be completely empty inside. It also gets soaked up by normal glass lenses, so you couldn't use a lens to aim it. So ASML had to use mirrors instead. But these weren't ordinary mirrors. They worked with the famous German mirror and lens company, Zeiss. Together, they made the smoothest mirrors in human history. To give you an idea, if you made one of these mirrors as big as the entire country of Germany, the biggest bump on it would be smaller than a grain of sand. This took 20 years and billions of dollars. ASML even had to ask its biggest customers, Samsung, TSMC and Intel, to invest billions to help finish the research. It was a huge gamble that could have bankrupted everyone involved.
For many years. But the size of the investment, the commitment you have to have, I think discouraged quite a few people.
Confidence to put all our eggs in one basket called EUV. With hindsight, we can say we placed the right bet.
I think sometimes people forget that, but EUV took us practically more than 20 years. I would say it's been a very risky investment because when we started, well, there was no guarantee the technology would work.
This machine was so complicated. This wasn't a project one company could do alone. It required building a global ecosystem of over 5,000 specialized suppliers. You heard it right. It's 5,000 companies, each providing a critical component for a machine that had never been built before, all working together just to build one. And then they did it. They mastered the light. Today, one of these EUV machines weighs over 180 tons. It takes 40 freight containers, 3 cargo planes, and 20 trucks just to ship one. Each one costs around $400 million. And the price is going up. As of today, fewer than 250 of these technological marvels exist in the entire world. So who buys them? This isn't a machine for just anyone. The buyers list is the most exclusive club in the world, the holy trinity of chip making, TSMC, Samsung and Intel. Together, these three companies dominate the world of advanced chip manufacturing, and they are completely, utterly dependent on ASML. The Taiwan-based giant is the world's largest contract chip manufacturer. They make the chips for Apple, Nvidia, AMD, almost everyone. How vital is ASML to TSMC? They own over 50% of all EUV machines ever installed. And here's the ultimate power move. Back in 2012, to ensure EUV development wouldn't fail, TSMC, Samsung and Intel had to give ASML billions of dollars. They literally had to fund their own monopolist. ASML has a 100% monopoly, not 90%, not 99%, 100%. They don't just sell the machine, they sell the key to the future. And only 3 companies have a house big enough to put it in. They don't make the chips, they make the machines that make the chips. They've created the ultimate, most critical choke point in the history of technology. When you have a monopoly on the future, you don't just attract customers, you attract governments. The immense strategic importance of these machines has not been lost on world powers. The United States has actively lobbied the Dutch government to prevent ASML from selling its most advanced EUV machines to China. The goal was simple: to halt China's technological progress by cutting them off from the world's most critical tool. For a moment, it looked like the strategy was working. But the story doesn't end there. Backed into a corner, China unleashed a national effort of historic proportions. If they couldn't buy the machines, they would try to build them. In late 2023, the world was stunned when Huawei released a new phone with a 7nm chip inside, a chip many thought was impossible for China to make. They achieved this by pushing older DUV technology to its absolute limits. Think of it as drawing a masterpiece with a thick marker. To get a fine line, you have to trace over it again and again perfectly. This multi-patterning technique is a brute force approach. It's less efficient, more expensive, and produces more faulty chips. but it worked. It was a stunning display of engineering willpower, proving they could stay in the game even without ASML's best tools. And they haven't stopped. Reports now suggest they've used the same techniques to crack 5 nanometers. But while China was fighting a war of brute force, one of ASML's old rivals decided to change the rules of the game entirely. In Japan, Canon announced a breakthrough that sent shockwaves through the industry. It's called nano-imprint lithography. Instead of using complex lasers and mirrors to project a pattern, NIL works more like a stamp. A master mold is created with the circuit design, and it's physically pressed onto the silicon wafer, imprinting the pattern directly. It's a radically simpler idea that could make chips for a fraction of the cost and using only a tenth of the power. While the technology is still new and faces challenges with defects, it represents a completely different way of thinking about the problem. Suddenly, ASML's perfect monopoly doesn't seem so perfect anymore. The global power game has changed. It's now a three-way race: the current champion, the powerful brute force challenger, and a rival with a totally new idea. So why does this incredible invisible monopoly matter to you? Because every leap forward we hope to make depends on it. Breakthroughs in medicine powered by AI drug discovery, truly autonomous vehicles, next generation climate modeling, it all starts with more powerful chips. For investors, it's like selling shovels during a gold rush. Instead of betting on which tech company will win, ASML sells the essential tools to all of them. For entrepreneurs, it's a masterclass in solving an impossible problem. A lesson in how deep technology, relentless focus, and decades of patience can build a moat so wide, no one can cross it. It's a reminder that the biggest opportunities are often hidden in the parts of the world we can't see. The story of ASML is the story of modern science, turning sand into intelligence, tin into plasma, and mirrors into magic. They are the quiet giant, the hidden architect, the one company that had to invent a star just to keep a promise made half a century ago. And in doing so, they ensured that Moore's law did not die. They just gave it a new kind of light to write with. Is this the end of ASML monopoly? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for more deep dives into the biggest stories in business and technology, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation. Thanks for watching.